Hi, in this Unity tutorial, we're going to go over how to use the Logitech F310 Gamepad in Unity. So the first thing we have to do to get to use a gamepad on our Unity game is we have to know about the input manager. The input manager can be accessed by going to Edit, Project Settings, Input. So what I did first was I looked up online to find out what the mappings were. I could figure it out, but it would take forever. And the Xbox 360 controller and the Logitech Gamepad, they both have the same mappings. So when you are reading a joystick, the controls on a joystick are either broken down as buttons or joystick axes. We're going to do these mappings here. And what I came up with here is the mappings that we're going to use, that we're going to set in the input manager for our thing. Okay, so there's two things to know. It's either going to be an analog input like on an axis, and if we're setting an axis value, we're going to have to set the dead value, the sensitivity, the type, the name of the axis, and we're doing it for one joystick, so I want to read joystick number 1. If we're setting a button, then we're going to have to set the text for the Alt positive button to name the button, and we're going to have to set the type to key mouse button, and I just want to read joystick 1. The input manager, I could add more than 18. Right now there's 18 things. I know my joystick has 18 things on it. So what I'm going to add is one more. I'm going to make 19. And by default, the input manager just makes a copy of the last one. So this one, let's say if this is going to be my left trigger, and I'm going to set it to a joystick axis, and it is the x-axis, and I just want it from joystick 1. The dead zone, I'm going to set it to 4, and the sensitivity, I'm going to set it to 1. For the sensitivity, I said 1. If I left the sensitivity at about 1000, then as I'm pressing the trigger, it would just pretty much go from 0 to 1. So now that I set this one up and I have the joy number equal to joystick 1, I kind of would go from here LT, and then I would just go full 36 values. And now I kind of would have all my, it makes a copy of LT, but all these copies already have joystick 1. And as I go changing the name, LB, and this would be, let's see what it is from over here. LB is this one, joystick button 4. So I have to change this to a 4. And I have to make sure this says button and joystick 1. And I would keep going through the line and doing this over and over. Now, kind of could get kind of tedious if I do this for every project I make, but the input manager is a file in your settings of your project. So if I go to open up my project in Explorer, and I look here in the project settings, here's the input manager file, right? So what I did is I saved off a version of my input manager file right here to use over and over. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste that into this folder. Let's see, copy, and then just paste. And I'll say replace the file in the destination. All right, so let me stop running. Exit. Then I'm going to open up Unity again. And it's the one joystick project. Okay, and I'm going to see if I have the settings in here, input. Okay, good. So here's all the settings from LT1, LB1. I put a 1 in after each of the input manager setting names because it's joystick 1. And that way if I have another joystick, like 2 joysticks plugged in, I could read joystick 2 as well. All right, so after I set up the input manager, which I showed you a shortcut, like once you go through the hard work of setting each of these things up, you could just save a file and copy it into new projects. Once I set up the input manager, I can go to my project, and basically what I did here is I just used the canvas element, and up here at the top is joystick. It just says the detected joysticks that it finds plugged into my laptop. And then for each of the settings, I just put a text. And then over here, I put an empty game object, joystick reader, and I made a script which I assigned each of these text elements to be able to show me a value. And then when I look at the script, this is what it has. One, since there's a lot of settings, so for joystick 1, I just made a class to hold all these text controls here. Boom, that's a class inside my class. So that I have text joystick for the title, and then I had this text joystick class which has property for each of these to hold all the pointers to each of these text boxes. In the start, what I did was I just used this function called getJoystickNames from the input class of Unity, and that returns an array of joystick names, a string array. And then I just display the names in the title bar. Okay, then in the update, I basically call out to a function I wrote called reading joystick 1. So reading joystick 1 is going to go through, and basically it's either going to use input get button if it's a button control on the joystick, or it's going to use input get axis if it's an axis control on the joystick. And the only control that's kind of tricky is the triggers, the left and the right trigger, because they share the same axis. They share the third axis. So if you are pressing the left trigger, then the third axis values are the positive ones. And if you press the right trigger, then the third axis values are the negative ones. So save that, go back to Unity, and where'd everything go? Press play. Now I'm holding my, as you can see here, I told you I have two Logitech F310s plugged into my laptop. So here, that get joysticks function detected both of them, and it knows the name of them. It's a controller Gamepad F310. That's the text that came back from that get joysticks function. Then over here right now, it's reading the values from my joystick 1 that I have plugged in. And I'm going to go ahead and press each of these buttons one at a time. So I'm going to press the left trigger. And as you can see, as I press it slowly, the values, it reads it. It's an analog control, the trigger. Then if I press my left button, the right trigger, you see how the right trigger is the negative and the left trigger with a positive of the third axis. And I press the right button. I press my back button, start button. Then I have my left analog stick. Let's see what happens there. The left analog stick is this one. Okay, left analog right is positive and left is negative. And then up and down, up is negative and down is positive. Now my right analog stick, left and right, up and down. Now my buttons, A, B, X, Y, and the D-pad left and right, up and down. And if I press the left analog in with my thumb, right here, if I press it in, it's an odd one, but it kind of, instead of just going straight to 1, I hold it down and it goes up to 1. And the right analog press does the same thing, and it goes up to 1. Okay, so just to let you see the code again really quickly, the two main important things are what? They are the input manager. That's the most important thing. You have to set the settings on the input manager. Then after you set the settings on the input manager, you could use the input class get button and input class get axis and just give the name of the setting from the input manager to read it. And I'll put this in input manager asset file with the Joystick 1 settings. I'll put it on my website, omarvision.com, for people to download so you don't have to type all this in. And also remember that the Logitech and the 360, they share the same input manager settings. And hopefully you guys can make a game with a joystick. There you go.